Welcome and thank you for tuning in to the 412 Double Play podcast. As pitchers and catchers have reported officially to spring training in Bradenton, I am, as always, host Michael Castrogano, special this week for my Double Play partner, as I am joined by new Pirates beat writer for MLB.com. Not new to the beat, but happy to welcome Alex Stumpf to the show. Alex, thanks for jumping on with me today. Congratulations on the new gig. How does it feel to be back covering Bucks baseball, certainly in warmer weather down in Bradenton?
Yeah, it feels good. I got a couple texts from my family today about how much it's snowing in Pittsburgh, and at the time, I was I was trying to find the air conditioning at my Airbnb, so it's a pretty good dichotomy for that at least.
I miss it. I've got, if people are watching on video, I've got my Bradenton Hawaiian shirt and my Bradenton t-shirt that I got at spring training last year. Not able to make it down this year. Hopefully next year. A lot of fun stuff to see there, but no, I'm sticking it out in the snow. For purposes of transparency, we record this stuff early. We're recording this on Friday night, so if any news breaks as we're recording, lots of rumors are going around. We're not going to talk about them because nothing's been confirmed yet. So if you're wondering why we're not opening the show talking about how we just traded for Mike Trout or something like that, if it happens, I'll bring it up in the outro. But news that we do have for the Pirates as of whatever time it is, 8:17 p.m. on Friday night. They had a Super Bowl Sunday signing, adding veteran catcher Yasmani Grandal, 1 year, $2.5 million. So Grandal struggled the past few years. 2021 season, he had a 240, 420, 520 triple slash, 93 games, 23 home runs, WRC plus of 157. He's a switch hitting backstop, so he replaces our previous switch hitting backstop, who's down with Tommy John, but now 35. Seems unlikely to revert back to that level. What is the thought process and role that Grandal brings to the organization?
I mean, the thought process is pretty simple. This team only had three catchers on the 40-man roster with Endy out for the year. Henry Davis, Jason DeLay, and Ali Sanchez. And there are a lot of question marks with Henry Davis. The team does believe he could be a catcher at the major league level, but he only caught 2 innings last year. He's not a proven commodity yet. He has to earn his job. He has to earn his playing time, like any young player at that point, regardless if you're a number one draft pick or not. So Grandal adds some stability. He adds a veteran voice. He was very open, talking about the opportunities, saying that, hey, I didn't have, a veteran I could lean on whenever I was young. We got a couple young catchers here. I'm willing to. I want to be that type of guy that they can go to. And that's something that we saw last year with like Rich Hill with the pitchers. We
Mm-hmm.
saw it with Austin Hedges with Jason DeLay. We saw it with Carlos Santana with a lot of these young position players. You do need some of those veteran voices with a young team like that. So I get why this makes sense, from the Pirates standpoint. Question is, there's going to be a bit of a casualty here, whether that's Jason DeLay going to the minor leagues, whether that's Henry Davis not getting as much playing time, or really whatever happens with that. So there are a lot of question marks still. Grandal is still, at the very least, a pretty good major league backup at this stage of his career.
And he's still uh, reports above average in framing, blocking, caught stealing.
Mm-hmm.
That's not quite as high, but framing's been something that they valued. Obviously, having Hedges on the roster last year,
Mm-hmm.
that was something important. Has there been, because you're down there and you get to see it in Pirate City, has there been instances where Grandal's working on framing with Henry and DeLay and even Sanchez possibly? I know he's a pretty good framer, but
I mean, it's just been a couple days. Like, you just talk at this point. Like, I have seen Henry and Grandal have a couple conversations like that, and sometimes it's as simple as that. Like, I know, for example, last year with Rich Hill and Johan Oviedo, it was just a conversation about sliders. Very casual. I think it was like a minute or two thing, but like that made an impact. So it's not so much always like, hey, I did this with framing, you should do this. Sometimes it just means, having a big brother, I guess, type of player that you could, lean on a bit.
sure. And I mean, that relationship with Oviedo and Hill definitely paid dividends. Oviedo had like the seventh highest whiff percentage on his slider, something like that, like for single pitch last year. It was definitely up there. But as far as another pitcher, they added former Rays pitcher southpaw Josh Fleming, split deal worth up to $850,000 if he's in the majors. Spent some time last year on the IL, left elbow inflammation, bounced between starter and reliever over the years. Career line 4.88 ERA, 1.42 WHIP. Advanced metrics don't paint a super rosy picture. I mean, looking at game logs, it looks like he either pitches 6 shutout or gives up a ton of runs immediately. What are like expected plans for him? Is he strictly in the mix for bullpen role, or are they just kind of throwing him out there and seeing what they get?
Well, coming into camp, he's going to get a chance as a starter, which for anyone that you think even tangentially has a chance as a starter, you got to give him at least that look right there. So if he comes out as like the second guy in a spring game, that doesn't mean, oh, he's a reliever now. It just means there are a finite amount of spring games and he's the second guy to come out. So they're going to give him that first look as a starting pitcher. Obviously, there's still some balls in the air that could be juggled. There's still some things that could happen with that group. But if nothing else, he does add a little bit of depth. He's not going to set the world on fire. I don't think anyone's going to claim that this guy is going to be, the next all-star or anything. But he is a steady hand. He is someone who can eat innings, and that's valuable, especially whenever you have this team's got to really rely on its bullpen. So you're going to need someone that you feel comfortable like, hey, he's going to give me at least 5 frames. There's value in that in particular. So it's a split deal. Obviously, the minor leagues are in play whenever it comes to this, even though I don't believe he has any minor league options left. I look at his depth, and if he can figure out some things, some things click, he's got to throw his cutter more this year, which is something that he got away from that he's really excited to bring back. Maybe something clicks, but I would look at this more of a death move than anything right now.
All right. I mean, the one thing that I noticed with him in researching, he generates a lot of weak ground balls. 59% career ground ball rate, 6.4% barrel rate. Both are well better than average for MLB pitching. Looking at the rotation, it's still a concern. There's been a lot of rumors. Again, we're not going to address them because nothing's concrete, and I don't like to theorize on that stuff, at least not on the podcast. Looking at that rotation, the guys that they've added, we've got Mitch Keller, solid arm at the top. He's the ace. Behind him, Martin Perez, Marco Gonzalez, both have potential to eat innings, provide value. We've been getting to see Perez at camp. I haven't seen any footage of Gonzalez. I'm assuming he's there, but I've seen a lot of footage of him, I think, working. Okay. With Driveline. After that, it's a bit more murky. Bailey Falter, Roansy Contreras, they're both out of options. Potential either could open the season in the rotation, in the bullpen, or on some other team. Luis Ortiz and Quinn Priester, they're both also in play for spots, not to mention the NRI guys, Michael Plasmeyer, Willie Peralta, who they recently added, Brent Honeywell, who they added last week. How open is the competition heading into spring training, and is there anything specifically that they're looking for?
I mean, the thing they're looking for more than anything is consistency, because you could look at someone like Quinn Priester, for example, who last year we saw some really good innings out of him, and then he would have 1 or 2 frames where just the wheels came off, and he would wind up having like this really good ground ball rate and some other things you could really take from in those starts. But then he'd have an ERA of, I believe, over 7. So like it was. Yep. They're looking for consistency more than anything with this group. And whenever I look at this team, I look at Rowe, I look at Falter, I look at Priester, I look at Luis Ortiz in particular. Not saying it can't be anyone else, like Fleming or an NRI guy, or if they bring in someone else, but I look at those 4 in particular, and they really kind of need 2 of them at least to step up and to show something that they, that they can be. All 3 of them were top 100 prospects not that long ago. Falter being a bit of an exception, but he has more of a major league track record to, fall on instead. They need quality from the back end of that rotation. And if Roansy Contreras looks like he did in 2021, 2022, he could be that guy. Luis Ortiz, if he could be that 2022 form, he could be that guy. Quinn Priester was a top 100 prospect for a long time, and I saw him throw the bullpen today and was so impressed by it. It's like, okay, that's my story of the day. Like Priester the way he approached it, the way that he attacked. He wants to be athletic. It's like he's saying the right things. I saw some good things from that. It's like, okay, a lot riding on you this year. You know, like this team. Ben Charrington brought it up too. Whenever at the media day for spring training on Thursday,
Mhm.
that whenever they were looking at starting pitchers, also in their mind was we want to make sure that there is some opportunity for our young starters. And I don't know if that means one spot. I don't know if that means two spots in the rotation. Some things might still have to shake out before we know for sure, but there is opportunity to be one there. Someone's got to run with it, though. Someone has to run with it for this to really work out.
Yeah, there's definitely.
I think it's all in the realm of possibility, though. I want to put that precursor. Like I said, I'm not saying that, this, it's not like not to pick on the guy, like a Derek Holland in 2020. It's like, well, maybe he could give us some innings. Like, it's like, no, there is upside with these guys. They all have a good ceiling. It's can they approach that or reach it?
I really liked Holland, but I was calling for him in 18. So by the time 2020 came around, um, so a weird thing is and this has kind of been something that they've grown accustomed to adding soft tossing pitchers. So Perez and Gonzalez, they're not the hardest throwers. I mean, putting Chapman aside because obviously, um,
It
Pre
averages out fine.
yeah, no, if you you've got the soft tossers in the beginning and then you just like wipe them out at the end, is there a specific quality that they're drawn to in that they went like Tyler Anderson, Jose Quintana's velocity was down, and then Rich Hill last year before Perez and Gonzalez this year. Um, you mentioned Quinn Priester, and his fastball has been really good at times, but his breaking stuff, his off speed stuff has rated so much better and was so much more effective. Is this something where they'll become less working off their fastball and more using the fastball as a show me pitch?
I mean,
Is
PNC
that getting
Park
too deep into
lends
the weeds on
itself
it?
well. Yeah, no. I mean, you brought up. I mean, they've been open with it. They do like the mold of like the softer tossing lefty, and some of it is left-handers. They have the left-on-left advantage, so that short right field doesn't play as big an impact. If they give up some hard contact on the ground, well, Hayes is just going to gobble that up. That's a no-brainer right there. That's a lot of outs there. So there are reasons why they like it. They have had success with it,
Mhm.
for the most part. Like Jose Quintana, Tyler Anderson went from guys who were swingmen maybe at the end of their ropes to their career to future all-stars, or, they get the big contracts. So there's a reason why they like those guys. I'm not that surprised that Marco Gonzalez in particular was on their, shopping list this year. Whatever he was, made available from the Braves. That was a kind of weird trade. There's like we got him just to trade him. I'm not surprised at all that the Pirates, pounced on that right there. They've had success with this multiplayer. I get why they targeted him more. They're double dipping this year, though. We haven't seen them double dip on these types of pitchers before, so I'm intrigued to see how it works out whenever it's a little more frequent.
Yeah, definitely we'll have to see with that. But speaking of starting pitching, number of top prospects in camp: Bubba Chandler, Anthony Solomito, Thomas Harrington, along with the two big names who could pitch in Pittsburgh sometime this season, Jared Jones and Paul Skeens. I know that none of these guys break camp with the team, no matter what fans on Twitter and Facebook and wherever say. What are some things to look for in the likely short time that they are in camp to potentially use as their springboard in development before they hopefully debut this season?
This might be a weird thing to hear out loud, but I kind of hope Skeens gets roughed up just a little in a spring training game, just to see him in that adversity moment of like, hey, I put the first two runners on and runners on the corners, nobody out against major league quality hitters.
Hmm.
How does he handle that? How does he approach those at bats type there? That's something that I feel like he and Jared Jones and any of these young pitchers, you could really take a lot from in those situations. I view the odds of Paul Skeens breaking camp with this team very, very low, and Jared Jones just like a little higher than that. But we're going to see them at some point this year if they're healthy, knock on wood for that. How do they handle themselves whenever they face a little bit of major league adversity? How do they approach, the time between starts? Like that was one of the big things for Paul Skeens last year whenever he was introduced to pro ball. Beforehand, in college, you get 7 days in between. Baseball, it's 5. Now, that doesn't mean, it's impossible or anything, but it's new. It's new, and you got to do some learning about yourself during that. He took some time to figure that out. So I want to see how Paul Skeens handles that, if he could handle some adversity. And also, I just want to see how, if he's going to hit 102 out of the gate, type of deal, because this guy throws hard. There's a reason why he was the number 1 overall pick. He's a special pitcher. There are a lot of special pitchers in this camp. And whenever we talk about this rotation, I feel like can this team survive the first couple months? Because the cavalry should be coming around mid-season between them and JT Brubaker being healthy and Mike Burrows. And there's a laundry list of mid-season. I feel like this rotation could be better than it is at the beginning of the season, or at the very least deeper with more options.
So with regards to Burrows and Brubaker, I feel like there's been some media personalities, I'll say, who have said that they're likely going to be back by midseason and be able to pitch innings in the major leagues. How confident is the organization that that's actually going to happen? Because Tommy John surgery is still no joke. It's typically, 12 to 18 months recovery before they even start pitching, and not meaningful innings, more like getting stretched out for the next year. And I mean, Burrow's surgery was in May of last year. I think Brubaker was April. They're pretty much around similar to the same time.
I think it was about April. Brubaker's was definitely in April. Burrow's, I think, was in May.
Yeah,
Please don't quote me on that, but
that's
thereabouts.
that's where I'm thinking. So
Yeah.
I'm the one on record for it. So do they feel that these guys will have an above average recovery time just to pitch what you would assume is going to be relief? Because you see, like Braxton Ashcraft, he was recovering from Tommy John. He only pitched, I think he ended up getting 40 innings last year, but it was also, he stayed in the minors. They didn't try to rush him up or anything like that. And I know prospect, different kind of level, but is there any expectation that these guys are going to be coming back and starting games even in September?
Yeah, I don't even think that's September. I think it's sooner than that. I talked to Brubaker, very briefly on Friday. I haven't reported it yet. Maybe I will by the time it comes out. He had a big checkup right after Pirates Fest, and all things look good. I mean, he's still on the right path. He's going to be with the club all through spring training, and the way that it's shaping up right now, it's 2 or 3 bullpens, or I can't remember if it's 2 or 3 bullpens or 2 or 3 weeks worth of bullpens around there. But then he starts rehabbing, so they're targeting about the All-Star game for him to come back, which would be big. I mean, that's borderline to a trade deadline acquisition, the way you think about it.
Sure.
That's a good guy to get right there. They're counting on him to be, part of those types. They need him to be part of this rotation in 2024. And whenever you do come back from Tommy John, you have to worry about innings limits. Well, whenever you miss half a season, that's less of a concern. Not to say that they're not going to be monitoring or anything, or that he's going to be pitching without limits, but you're not going to have as many chances to accrue 150, 180 innings, whatever that number is. So maybe that's something that you got to keep in mind for 2025. But 2024, I look at those guys as they'll be back mid-season if they continue on their path, and this team's going to need all the pitching help that it can get. I still view JT Brubaker as a part of this 2024 team, someone who can make an impact.
That's exciting. I'm really excited about Burrows. I think of everybody who got injured from last season, he was the one I was most bummed to miss that kind of development. But for the bats, a lot of the younger guys with something to prove. O'Neal Cruz, obviously rebounding from the ankle injury. Henry Davis trying to stick behind the dish, get clicking with the bat. Didn't quite get it going last year between the injury and trying to figure out outfield. Rowdy Tellez had an injury-displaced year. Who on the team among those, or even someone else, is coming to camp with the biggest chip on their shoulder?
I mean, I look at Rowe. I think this is the guy who has the most to prove. Last year, he came in with so much excitement. He was part of the Dominican Republic, World Baseball Classic team. There is reason to be like, okay, this guy is going to be part of this rotation for years to come. And boy, oh boy, did that not go well last year. I think he could grow from it. I think he could improve from it. But there's so much for him personally, his Pirates' future riding on this. Like, if he does not look good this spring, I can't see a scenario where something really has to go horrible for him not to be on the opening day roster. But if it's as a reliever, well, what do you do? Is he just killing time in case someone needs to go as a starter? Do you convert him to a reliever to try to find that velo? There are some things up in the air. He's the guy I feel like who has the biggest chip, the biggest chip on his shoulder, biggest thing to prove this camp, because, man, this team, I keep bringing it back to one point. This team needs starting pitching. And a year ago, I think everyone would have been like, well, you have Roansy Contreras. He's going to be one of those guys. If last year was just a bad year and he looked good, he looks leaner, he looks, not to say he was big, but just like where he was upper body wise. And maybe this is just, clubhouse, I could see him walking around in a t-shirt instead of always in a jersey. He looks a lot closer to where he was in like 21, 22. Hey, and he's moving. I mean, very amateur eye here, but he looks like he's moving closer than he was. There's I'm taking some positive things from that, first session with him.
So with Rowe, the organization seemed to play the whole situation a little close to the vest as far as what was wrong with him, what was going wrong. Have they disclosed anything specifically that they felt was wrong, anything they were working on? Because he went back to like camp at, I want to say, mid-season last year, and then just fell off, and we didn't hear any updates. Are they still kind of close-lipped, or is it where?
I mean, they don't like going too far in depth whenever it comes to development and stuff like that. From what I've gathered, I can't share a whole lot from of what I know with it. I had reason of optimism, though. This was all he was able to come back from that, and I feel like that's everything else is just window dressing on that. Like, not saying it's guaranteed to bleed, but like organizationally, they thought that he could come back from this, and that's what really matters more than anything.
Because we didn't know if it was an injury or if it was a rookie of the year
situation. It wasn't.
He slipped and broke his elbow.
From what I've gathered, it wasn't like it wasn't an injury or like I know he had a elbow scare in, I believe, 2021.
Right.
Like, from what I've gathered, it wasn't anything like that. It was just external things.
Okay. So, for guys who did have a strong season, as far as the team, strong start, strong finish, middle part, not quite as much, but core pieces, guys that they've, for the most part, got locked up for the near future. Brian Reynolds, Jack Sawinski, Key Brian Hayes, each provided above average offensive production. Heading into 2024, whose offensive success will be most impactful for this team's success? And I have a feeling you're not going to name one of those three.
I mean, it's Cruz, man. Come on. I mean, shortstop was such an area of need last year, and it goes beyond, well, they traded Kevin Newman and they didn't have anyone else. Like, we could count on one hand how many players could do what Oneil Cruz could potentially do in the majors. Like, this guy has boundless potential, and he got hurt, and they didn't really have a true shortstop to replace him. Like, Rodolfo Castro and Tucupita Marcano were playing out of position. Leo Peguero and Nick Gonzalez played better at second base also. There wasn't a real spot for anyone who could do it. So if he could be what he could be, that takes, what my opinion to be maybe the biggest weakness in the lineup last year into potentially their greatest strength this year. It has the potential for that.
I see so many, because I do fantasy baseball, so I'll watch like podcasters talking about like, oh yeah, this shortstop's and Ellie De La Cruz, who is like the main comp for O'Neal Cruz. Everybody's over the moon for him, and he has a higher strikeout rate the second half of last year, close to like 40%, than our Cruz ever did. And if you look at the stats that O'Neal posted before he got injured last year, it's a small sample size, but both sides of the ball seemed like he was making meaningful improvements. Is there any? I don't know if you've gotten to talk to him specifically. Is there anything that he's targeting to work through? Like obviously, the defense was something he was targeting early on last season, and he had a goal of having a 30-30 or 40-40 season last year. Has he posted a lofty goal like that again this season, or is he just working on being the best he can be?
We're gonna do a group thing whenever the position players officially think. So we haven't had anything like that yet, but yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he says 30-30 again, because he has that potential, man, and it's rare air. So
I'm really
yeah, we
excited
haven't
about
heard
it.
anything from that yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I think people should be.
I mean, you look at guys like Bobby Witt Jr. and you say, oh, why don't we have someone like that locked up? Just like, I mean, O'Neal Cruz is pre-arbitration, and he could be even better than Witt. I think his sprint speed pre-injury, because we don't have those numbers since then, was in the top,
Yeah.
what, 3%? Like, it
Mhm.
was insane.
Yeah, it was something ridiculous. Like this guy is a video game, man, and I know it's nothing new to be said, but like, what else can be said? He is a creator player. He is. He, whenever you go and you're just like, as tall as he can make him, as hard as he could hit the ball, and max speed. That's what I want as my player.
Well, that's the thing, because you and me, who follow this team and you write about it constantly, we know. But some fans who haven't seen him since last April and out of sight, out of mind, they're not thinking about how great this guy can be. And so I'm really excited to see him open eyes. I mean, the team entered the offseason with a number of holes. One place that looked solid was a bullpen. David Bednar, Colin Holderman, Carmen Majinski, Dari Moreta, Ryan Barucki had a weirdly good season. But then they add Aroldis Chapman, who had the second highest K percentage in MLB last year at 41.4%, behind just Felix Bautista. It seems like that group are set to open the season between Bednar, Holderman, Majinski, and Chapman, certainly as at least four of the spots for the pen. Are there any front runners, or even if you want to give dark horses for the final bullpen spots among the guys in camp?
I mean, it's a true competition. I mean, there are a couple guys that we're gonna see: Bednar and Majinski and Holderman and Chapman and Barecki, who's got a contract, and like, but there's still three spots left. And I mean, knock on wood, not that you would want this to happen to any of them, but if someone gets hurt, even if it's a short term 15-day thing, that opens up an opportunity for someone else. There's a little more optionable depth that this team has that they haven't had in the last 5 years or so. Whenever it comes to the bullpen, that's very valuable and something you got to keep in mind. I mean, not to pick on a guy, if Colin Selby and a non-roster player have really good springs, Selby can be optioned to the minors and the non-roster player couldn't. That doesn't mean that it's anybody's fault. It's just the nature of the business right now. So I do view there are at least like two or three bullpen spots that should be fairly up for grabs this spring.
And there's a number of arms who could potentially be contending for those.
Oh yeah. Like we could go through a list of. I mean, like we could go through every Brent Honeywell and minor league guy, but there is a lot.
Yeah. And I'm not even going to go through them all because there's just a bunch. And I mentioned at the start, not your first spring in Bradenton, so the whole air quotes best shape of their life classification. We as fans, as I mentioned, see some pictures, we see some video. Guys like maybe Chapman is wearing a Child's Husky jersey or something, because every single video I've seen, it looks like he's about to rip through it Hulk style. But who of the guys that you've seen who've reported so far are looking noticeably stronger over last season or over of the new guys over what have previously been seen?
Chapman, dude, that guy is humongous. Like he's been in the American League in my time in the beat. It's like the first time I saw him, and it's like, I mean, tall, but he's built. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous, and he's the first guy, literally the first guy in the weight room, at 6 a.m. Him and Martin Perez. It is ridiculous right there. Bednar, I think maybe dropped a little. Henry Davis has put on some healthy weight. He wanted to get a little bigger to do, to catch over the course of a full season. It looks like he's done
Okay.
that. So there are a couple guys right here. Position players are just now starting to trickle in. A lot of them, like a couple of them, have come through. Just to throw a guy here, I mean, he's always, since I've known him, been pretty built. But like Tamar Johnson is just a small piece of leather, but well put together. Like that guy, I don't know if there's an ounce of fat on him in general. So I'll throw him up there too. Why not?
Small but mighty. Yeah. Um, some of the pictures and video I've seen, and I got to see him in person at Pirates Fest, Quinn Priester. Has he put on like some muscle potentially to get that velocity back on the fastball, or is that just an illusion of some sort?
We had a hiccup here. Sorry, I'm at the mercy of Airbnb Wi-Fi. Who is this?
Quinn Priester. Has he put on muscle in the off
Priester.
season? Does he look like?
No, but he spent a lot of time really evaluating. He looks good. I'll answer it
Okay.
like that if the Wi-Fi will finally
Yeah.
cooperate here on my end. Sorry for this. Uh, he looks good. It's not so much muscle. It's much. He really talked about wanting to be more athletic, being able to fall off the mound the way that he wants. So he looks like he's in a good position for that. Not so much muscle, but
Priester's
it's
my
not
breakout
always
pick for
muscle or
this
whatever.
season of the. Sure. Yeah. No. I understand. With
Yeah.
162 games, it's a haul. It's a slog, and so guys need to build up muscle, need to kind of like cut fat and just be ready because by the end of the season, they're gonna be worn down. They're gonna be in a completely different shape than when they started the year. So yeah, Priester's my sleeper breakout pick. I'm really hoping he puts it together this year. Um, but less than 6 weeks from the start of the season, and as fans are listening to or watching this, less than a week away from the first game of spring training, what are you most tuned into this spring or most intrigued by as far as a specific prospects development or positional battle, for instance, on this? Something that's like catching your eye. I know it's just pitchers and catchers and a couple position players, but like, what are you
Yeah.
specifically excited to watch for?
I mean, Skeens is an easy answer whenever it comes to like the prospect side, but like for the sake of
Low
originality,
hanging
I'll
fruit.
expand it. Low hanging fruit is there for a reason, man. But like, I'm gonna expand it to just the young pitchers in general. I want to see Bubba Chandler. I want to see Saul Meadow. I want to see, Jared Jones. I want to see Thomas Harrington. There are a lot of young arms that I really want to see. In this type of environment. Looking forward to that. Positional battle wise, second base is the most intriguing because for years we heard, oh, Peguero and Gonzalez, that could be the double play, combo of the future. And not to say that it's guaranteed going to be one of those two because Jared Triolo's in that mix, and you can't, discount, Bay and Alika Williams. But like, I kind of view Peguero and Gonzalez as like that very well could be how this second base battle, shakes out. Like which one of those two? So I'm intrigued by a lot. Second base, whatever happens with the pitching, especially the starting pitching, uh, back end with those other guys I mentioned earlier, I think are going to be the most interesting battles, and I just want to see these kids pitch. This team has legitimately, I think this class of minor league pitcher prospects is as good as it has been in a long time for the Pirates, and as good, if not better, than any other team in baseball. I don't think that's out of line to say that the Pirates have the number one overall pitching prospect and then 3 other top 100 guys. Put that up with anyone.
Yeah, no, I mean, you look at MLB Pipeline, you look at like ESPN, any of the lists have the Pirates with the most top end pitching prospects. Skeens, we all saw the video, maybe not all of us, but if you haven't seen it, a video of Skeens playing catch with Priester earlier this week, and he broke his glove apart. Like, he's just, it's fun to watch. It's exciting. I'm gonna, like I said, watch it all from TV because I'm up here in Brisk, Pennsylvania. But ending this show on a little bit of a non-baseball note. Like I mentioned before, you've been down to Bradenton before. I got to go down last year and catch some stuff like Mixins, which unfortunately the building itself is no longer in use, but they've got the food truck. And some other fun things to sightsee. What are your favorite like must do or must see spots when you're down in Bradenton, in the friendliest city?
I mean, Mixon's was way up there. I mean, the orange swirl ice cream, chef kiss. I've got a couple haunts. Restaurant wise, Pier 22 and Tide Tables. I mean, Tide Tables is like the best, seafood dive bar in the world, and Pier 22, maybe my favorite restaurant, out of anywhere that I go over the course of a season. Best key lime pie in the world for anyone that goes down there. The beaches are obviously beautiful down here. Manatees, if you're into that, like my mom has made a couple trips, down here, and she's a big manatee, fan. So it's been cool to see those. Like, there's a lot of really fun little things that you just can't get in Pittsburgh down here. So, like, I get just the right amount of Bradenton, I feel like, because I couldn't, live in Florida for forever. But like a couple weeks, I didn't have to deal with the snow on Friday, so I consider that at least a partial win.
Yeah, no, it's definitely different than landlocked Pennsylvania, but that's exciting. Appreciate you bringing your insights from Bradenton. Hopefully we're going to have some news out of there, but we're excited to see all of your writing this upcoming season.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks. Well, with no news coming up through the weekend, that wraps it up for this week's episode. Thank you to Alex for jumping on with me this week. You can follow him on Twitter at AlexJStumpf. Get his stories on neat new website, may have heard of it, MLB.com. He's going to be writing a ton of stories over the next 8 months or so. If you don't already, you're missing out. Definitely go and subscribe to that. You can also find me on Twitter at 412 Double Play. Continue listening to the show, Spotify, YouTube, Apple Podcasts, wherever else podcasts are found. Subscribe to get notified when we drop our new episodes. We're going to be doing a farm system preview in the upcoming weeks. Really excited for that. Got some former guests that we're going to be welcoming back. Looking forward to that. It's always a fun part of the season. Also, check out the articles from myself and fellow podcasters on Pirates.com. Link's going to be in the description. Ton of talented guys there doing some awesome work. As we get into the season, we're definitely going to be ramping that up. So thank you again for that. Thank you for checking out the show. The amount of people who have been watching, especially over this prospect series, has been really unbelievable. So I really appreciate it. From all of us here at the 412 Double Play podcast, thank you for joining us, and let's go Bucks.